The Citizens Club of Springfield Mayoral Forum is brought to you by Abraham Lincoln Capital Airport, Central Illinois Building and Construction Trades Council, Kerber, Eck Braeckel Asset Management, Maldaner's Restaurant, Michael Higgins, owner, chef, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and through the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
And on behalf of the Springfield Citizens Club, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. Let me extend a welcome and thanks to the candidates as well. Briefly, the format that will govern our forum this morning, it's one that a committee of the Citizens Club has crafted, and we hope it will maximize the candidates' responses and comments in the time that's available to us this morning. The format does not include opening or closing statements by the candidates, but will center on questions from our panel members and follow-up questions from the panel when it seems appropriate. Candidates will have 1 minute in which to answer their respective question, with an additional minute to respond to any follow-up questions. The first question will come from me this morning, and each candidate will have 2 minutes in which to respond to that one. Keeping time for this morning is Carol Sutton, a member of the Planning Committee. A green light will signify the beginning of the response time. The yellow light will indicate there are 15 seconds remaining, and the red light, of course, will signify time has elapsed. Now, let me introduce the candidates in alphabetical order, left to right, for the audience. Mike Coffey, Mike Houston, Frank Kunz, and Shelia Stock-Smith. The panel members for our forum this morning are left to right, Jenna Dooley, Morning Edition host and reporter for WUIS Public Radio. Patrick Yeagle, staff writer and reporter for Illinois Times and IllinoisTimes.com. Matt Dietrich, editorial page editor for the State Journal-Register. Our first question, which I will direct to each of the candidates, upon election on April 5th, what are your priorities in the short term? What is your long-range vision for the city, let's say 10 years down the road? And what are the specific leadership skills you will bring to bear on both? Mike Coffey?
Thank you. The first thing that I would like to do is do a line-by-line audit of the budget, but more importantly than that, look at the personnel and find out where there is waste and mismanagement in government. We need to have a smaller government. We need to make reductions. So the first thing will be to go through the personnel. As far as long-range plan, once we get the personnel under control, what I would like to see is a infrastructure project for the city of Springfield. We have many infrastructure needs, and we will not be able to get to those infrastructure problems until we right-size government and we begin to live within our means. And what do I bring to the office that will make me a good mayor is I think I can work with people. One of the things that I've proven as I've been on the convention center board is I'm able to work with an 11-member board somewhat like the city council. So I will be able to bring people and be inclusive. The mayor's office is not a dictatorship. The mayor needs to lead, but he also needs to be able to work with people, and I will be able to do that.
Mike Houston?
I think the immediate things that we need to deal with, of course, are the budget. I think that we need to think in terms of putting our management team together for all the various departments of city government, but very specifically CWLP. And those are the types of things that we're going to be starting with. I think that one of the things that we need to do is to, as a new mayor, to reach out and immediately begin working with the aldermen so that we begin to work that type of relationship where we can have a working relationship. We begin the communication process, which is a two-way ongoing communication that the mayor is going to need in order to be able to work with the council members. And there will be some new council members that we'll need to work very, very closely with. I think as we look at the city of Springfield 10 years down the road, I would hope that we would have implemented a infrastructure program to deal with the streets and sewers, that we'll no longer be driving down streets that have potholes in them, that we actually have sewers that work, that people won't have to worry about backup into their basements and into their homes, that we will have improved the quality of life for the people of our community, that we will have healed the racial divide that currently exists within the community, that we will have improved the city in terms of its livability, its attractiveness. I think what I bring in terms of qualifications is the fact that I served 2 terms as mayor of the city of Springfield. I do know how city government works. I know how it's financed. Most importantly, I think I know how to make it work better. I've got 20 years of experience in CEO positions. I've got over 35 years of private sector management experience. And if the city needs something right now, it needs a mayor who is an experienced manager. City government is a big business.
Thank you, Mr. Houston. Frank Kunz, and I'll repeat the question if you'd like.
No, I understand it. First thing I do is, since I've been on the council for 12 years, I know pretty much all the departments. So the first thing I do is meet with all the departments, and the first priority would be get rid of any unnecessary spending. And of course, there may be some jobs that end up having to go. And then as far as the infrastructure, my goal is to take every bit of unnecessary spending and put it into the line items so we can start rebuilding Springfield sidewalks and streets. But part of that has to be done by our own people, because when you go out for bid, it just gets to be too expensive to do the small streets, and that's why they never seem to get done in this city. We build a subdivision, the developers put in the streets and sidewalks, and 30 years later, the city still hasn't done nothing to take care of. And what I bring is, as already being on the city council, I know how to work with all the aldermen. There's going to be a lot of them returning, so I think I wouldn't have any problem getting things done through city council. And my hope for 10 years for the city to just look better, and you'll be able to drive down the streets.
Shelia Sock-Smith.
In the short term, I would immediately take a pay cut, a 10% pay cut. I've said that throughout my campaign, and my directors will take a 5% cut. I will order that on day one. I will also direct our all the city departments to begin a top-to-down agency management review and present the recommendations to me within 60 days. And again, then I think one of the most important things the mayor does and will do is pull together their top team, the people who will be helping manage city government. So those are the things I would be doing in the short run. In the 10-year vision, I would hope that we would have made significant improvements in infrastructure, specifically in our older neighborhoods, and medical district would be on its way. Some of the corridors leading in, the connectors between the downtown and some of our older historic neighborhoods. So I'd like to see in 10 years that there's significant improvement and some real advancement of some of the plans that are already out there, and really getting to generate that and get that moving, as well as the creation of jobs. In terms of leadership skills, I think government is about serving people and solving problems. And I've been worked in and around public policy for 28 years. That's what I know how to do. And it's not about just coming in and saying just from the top, I'm going to do this and dictating things like that. It just doesn't work that way. It's about bringing people together. It's about examining trends. It's about looking at the history of programs. It's about bringing people together, getting different ideas. And I think I have that kind of leadership skill that will bring people together, and we can solve problems together.
Now the balance of our forum this morning will consist of questions from each of the 3 panel members. And the planning committee for today's forum, this morning's forum, agreed that we'll turn a block of time over to each of the 3 media representatives of about 12 to 15 minutes each. And within each of those blocks of time, one reporter will pose the initial questions and be prepared to ask follow-up questions. And so our first segment will be hosted by Jenna Dooley with WUIS. Jenna?
In today's State Journal-Register, candidate Houston says he is prepared to sue over the location of the rail corridor. Candidate Houston, we'll start with you, and I'll ask you to explain your decision, and then I would ask the other challengers to answer how you would handle what you would consider an unfavorable decision on the rail corridor location.
I think that as we think in terms of the future of the city of Springfield, where high-speed rail comes through the community is one of the items that's going to have a major impact in terms of the future of our community. I think it's up to the mayor to defend this community. I have personally read the 3 studies that were done in 1999 that compared the 3rd Street tracks to the 10th Street tracks to the 19th Street tracks. There is no question that from the city's perspective and the people in this community, that the best corridor is the 10th Street corridor. I am fully confident that when the study is done in terms of the environmental impact study, that it will say that the 10th Street corridor is where that train track should be going through. And if for some reason it goes someplace else, I would do everything in my power, including filing a lawsuit to stop the entire process to protect the city of Springfield.
Mr. Kunz?
Well, first off, the 1999 study did not ever include the extra passenger trains or the number of trains that UP decides to put down their tracks. I'll wait till the actual study that does come out, and if it says the 10th Street tracks is the best viable one, then I would go along with that. The one thing I'm not prepared to do is to bankrupt the city, trying to fight the railroad, the federal government, the state government to keep it off the 3rd Street tracks. Excuse me.
Ms. Stock-Smith?
You know, we are involved in some, I think, very, very delicate negotiations with this, and I think it is completely irresponsible to use a political campaign and the posturing to present what Mr. Houston has presented. I think it gums up the process. I think it actually can really serve as a detriment to getting what we really want as the positive outcome here for Springfield. I have said from the beginning I will aggressively work to advocate for getting the railroad consolidation on 10th, and I believe we're going to, but it takes a lot of hard work, it takes a lot of cooperation, and it takes a lot of collaboration, and it doesn't just take, you know, one side saying, well, I'm just going to sue and you know, be done with it. I think it really undermines the process, and that is not the approach I would take.
Mr. Coffey?
I believe that the study will come back and say that the 10th Street corridor is the best place for it. I want to be very leery about lawsuits. This city has got has not been successful in suing before, and I agree with Frank Kunz that I'm not going to bankrupt the city on lawsuits. Mike Houston's previous administration had a $2 million lawsuit, cost the city of Springfield $2 million fighting the voting rights lawsuit. So I want to be very careful about bankrupting the city of Springfield. But I am definitely for going on 10th Street, and I'll do everything in my power to try and do it, but I won't bankrupt the city to make it happen.
I do want to have a follow-up with candidate Houston. If you are prepared to enter into a lawsuit, would you propose a cap that the city would contribute?
Well, first of all, everyone is indicating that lawsuits are bad. Lawsuits are necessary from time to time to defend the city. And I would point out one other thing, that we were not making any progress in terms of dealing with Union Pacific till I sat into a meeting where we were meeting on a weekly basis with the leadership of the community. And I said, it isn't a matter that Union Pacific doesn't have anything to lose. They're looking at $4 billion that they're going to receive from the federal government to improve these tracks. And what we ought to do is say, if they're not coming to come down the 10th Street tracks, that we're going to sue them, and we'll stop the entire process in the state of Illinois. I'm only concerned about the city of Springfield. I'm not concerned about the state of Illinois. And there are certain things that you would have to be willing to fight for. Granted, it may cost money, but anybody can throw out any kind of number they want to today, but nobody knows what something like that would cost. The very fact that you're willing to deal in a lawsuit may be enough to change the situation.
The next question comes on relations between city versus state. We're going to start with Mr. Kunz. It's evident payouts are taking place in Springfield. If the state is unable to legalize video poker, would the city crack down on this?
I don't know how many places you want to put out of business. No, I would probably, in my administration, with a real short answer, would be the status quo.
Ms. Stock-Smith?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question proper.
If the state of Illinois is unable to legalize video poker, would the city crack down on this using existing police force, or would you put more resources to cracking down on this, payouts?
We haven't had this question. Yeah, I mean, if it's not legal, we're gonna, do whatever we can within the resources that we have to make sure that it's not happening.
I would follow up there's been comments from police that there's not enough resources to make this a priority issue. That said, would you still crack down on it?
Yeah, I don't know what crack down really means. I mean, we have a lot of things that we have to enforce in this community, and we have limited resources to do it. So, I would think that, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty important. If it's not legal, we should be, I wouldn't make it a top priority, I guess, if that's what you're looking for. I think that it's, again, there's many things that we have to do in our police force, and there's a number of, there's limits to which we can do it. But, sir, if there's certain, targeted efforts, I would support that.
Mr. Coffey?
Well, I would hope that the state could get it done, because I think we can raise some money with it, given the number of poker machines that are in bars all over this city. Would I enforce the law? Yes. Am I going to attack and send, is that going to be the #1 priority in my administration? No. But I mean, would we enforce the law when we found violations? Yes.
And finally, Mr. Houston?
The state has been trying for 2 years to put together the rules to implement the usage of these machines, and they're trying to be very, very careful in terms of how this is done. The state is the agency that is propagating these rules. It will be up to the state to enforce it. I have faith that eventually the state will in fact be able to come up with a way to do this, because they do in fact need that revenue. And part of the revenue from video poker will in fact flow to the city of Springfield. I don't see the city of Springfield getting deeply involved in the operation of these machines.
And the final question from me, there's been editorial cartoons, some attacks throughout this campaign season. What is the biggest misconception about you that has come out during this campaign, and how would you counter this charge? And we're going to start with Ms. Shelia Stock-Smith.
Well, I guess the recent cartoon from Chris Britt, which I thought was actually quite funny, characterizes me as wanting to have a committee for everything. And I have said from the beginning of my campaign that I have a very collaborative style. I come from the community. I work with, at the grassroots, at community, and I know how public policy is really made. And public policy is not made from the top down. It's made with a lot of people and a lot of different perspectives, and taking into account a lot of different interest groups. I've actually only proposed 2 committees. One has been a national search committee, or a search committee to conduct the search for CWLP, general manager, which I think, given kind of the history of what we've had there, I think that was an important move, and I have said that I would form a business city task force to look at making the city more business friendly.
Mr. Coffey.
Well, since he's been doing a lot of cartoons, #1, I'm not as heavy as that one picture showed me, sitting on the bar stool. #2, my hair is not receding as badly as he showed it on the second cartoon. And 3rd, I never wear a chef's hat. So, but I think more importantly than all of that is, Chris Britt has portrayed it as, boy, there's just, pasta man over there, and he's not qualified to be mayor of Springfield. I went to the University of Illinois. I am fortunate enough to have a great family. We've got a great family business. And so I came back to work with my family because, they mean a lot to me, and working with them has been an absolute, great asset in my life. So that would be it. The fact that, I'm fortunate enough to have a successful family business and work there does not mean that I'm not qualified and all that. I'm living the American dream, immigrant great-grandparents that came to this country, grandparents that started a business, parents that made it better, and then I've come into the business and I believe I've made it even better. I'm very fortunate and happy to have had this experience.
Mr. Houston?
Well, I guess I have had the experience of being in public office before, and one of the things I realize is that not everything that's going to appear in the media is something that you like, but I realize that the media has a job to do. Sometimes when they do it too well, you may not like what you see, but for the most part, I think Chris Britt specifically is a very talented individual. He's had some cartoons that I've enjoyed. He's had some cartoons that I haven't enjoyed. But you take that as part of the daily life, and you realize that as mayor you have a function, the media has a function, and you each are doing the best job that you can.
And finally, Mr. Kunz.
I'm finally glad I made a cartoon. Actually, to me, as long as they spell my name right, I have no problem with the press.
So you would say that...
They've got me dead on right the way they portray me, so...
But do you feel that the portrayal that has been put out there by other candidates or the media have been accurate?
Yeah, I have no problem with people said about me. I do campaign, though. A lot of people don't think I campaign. I just do it in my own way.
What is your style?
Just more talking to people one-on-one.
And that concludes my questions. We're going to go to Patrick Yeagle with the Illinois Times.
Thank you, Jenna. My first question is going to start with Mr. Coffey. There's been a lot of talk in this campaign about streamlining government. Whom would you task with actually examining the government to identify inefficiencies, redundancies, and political hires? And how do we know that that process itself won't be political?
Well, as far as handling that, the first thing I'll do is I'll get into office and I'll pick my directors, and then the directors and myself, we will go through department by department and analyze what the functions people in office are doing. Is your job necessary? Are you doing a job? And I'll go through and we'll interview people and say, are there ways that we can make this department more efficient? And one of the things that's happened is I've gone and talked to people at City Water, Light and Power, people at Public Works, people all over the city, is they all have really, really good ideas, but they claim that there's not the access to the mayor's office. Their ideas are not appreciated or not even heard or listened to. So that will be the first thing you do. You pick your directors and you go through with your directors and the people that are in the offices. There's many people that are dying to make this city better. They're just waiting for a mayor and their directors to step up and say, what can we do to help you make this city better? One of the things I came up with is not to make it political is, I want to put my hires up in front of the council. That's been criticized as if that I'm not going to be a strong mayor and I'm going to look for the alderman. That's not my intention at all. My intention with that is so that there's it's open and transparent. So you get the opportunity to see who I'm going to put in offices. The idea behind it would be that if I put somebody up that is so political for the job of City Water, Light and Power, the job of Public Works, whatever that may be, that the public will know about it and they will be able to express their concern. I don't see this as something where I'm hiring people and every single person the council is going to object to. I see it as being on the consent agenda and going through immediately.
Mr. Houston.
In terms of who you would use to identify problems, one of the things that I've done, and I was the first candidate to do this, was to talk in terms that I will do a personnel audit of every position in city government to see exactly how each position is functioning so we can make a determination as to what services each position is providing to either the city or the taxpayers in the city of Springfield. And what I would anticipate are using people who are not in city government, but people who have been involved in government, particularly at the state level, to come in and to do that type of thing. I would also be relying on my department heads to be able to look into to identify areas. There are some people in city government that are in fact doing a very good job, and I would anticipate that those people would remain in city government. We will be bringing in new people into city government, and I think that the people that are brought in will have the capability of doing that.
Mr. Kunz.
Well, having served 12 years, I know a lot of the people who actually do the real work in the city government, and I rely on a lot of those inside each department that I've become friends with and met dealing with business-wise, as to go to them and say, all right, how can we streamline each department? And we have a great number of people at the city government that do work their butts off, and they give you plenty of ideas. You don't need to bring in outside people who don't even understand what the job is. So I definitely rely on the people that are actually doing the jobs to tell me where we can streamline. I can guarantee you most of them will give you a lot of ideas.
And how would you make sure that that doesn't become political?
I've never got a job for nobody in 12 years, and I don't plan on getting a job for anybody in 12 years. You will be hired on your merits, because nobody will see a name when they're seeing the resume until it gets down to the end. You won't have no clue who they are.
Ms. Stock-Smith.
Again, from the very beginning of this campaign, I've said that I'm going to have and direct the directors who are there at the time. There may be some coming and going during this process, to conduct a top to bottom agency management review and then to present me with recommendations. I mean, that's just the first step, but I've also said that in that, the departments will be directed, the department directors will be directed to consult closely with staff, with frontline staff, with labor, with their supervisors, and also with the stakeholders in the community that are most affected by their work. So again, it's a beginning of a long-term process. I mean, not totally long-term, but beginning of a process, and that's how I would start that process and look at the recommendations that are given.
And do you have any plan to make sure that that is transparent so that it doesn't become political?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I have said from the beginning of my campaign that, I mean, one of the premises of my campaign has been that I think we need to change the way we do business in Springfield, and part of that is that I'm referring to is this old style, machine style politics. So I'm committed to putting an end to that. That's going to take a while. This stuff didn't develop overnight, and it certainly, isn't going to maybe go away. But in my administration, I am not going to be looking at my, putting new department heads, and the ones, if I do choose to keep any, they would not be people who, are coming from, the political ranks or the precinct committeemen, stuff like that.
Thank you. My next question will start with Mr. Houston. The Davlin administration was criticized by some for its handling of alleged instances of racism at CWLP. How would you have handled that issue, and do you feel that that environment still exists? And if so, how would you remedy that?
One of the things we've talked about is that we really need to heal the racial divide that we have in the community. And one of the things we have to realize is that whether it is real or it's perceived, for those that perceive it, it is real, and we need to deal with it. When we have incidents such as the noose incident that we had within City Water, Light, and Power, that is the type of thing that really divides the community. And I think that in terms of dealing with that particular situation, I only know what was reported in terms of the media. But I think that we cannot have those types of incidents in city government, that we cannot allow people who work in city government to do those types of things, and that ultimately we should be terminating people when we have any type of incident like this, so that you make sure that that is not something that continues to happen in city government.
Thank you. Mr. Kunz.
Well, considering I'm the only one up here that actually lives in a minority area, the racial divide everybody keeps talking about just isn't an everyday conversation with the people I live around. They're more worried about their streets, their sidewalks, whether the police are going to show up or the fire trucks. And I think a lot of this stuff gets blown out of proportion. And I've sat underneath on city council when there's been about 3 racial things. One of them was a real travesty with a policewoman. The other 2, I think, 2 of the people involved were more political than what people want to believe. And I think some of this just got blown way out of proportion.
Thank you. Ms. Stock-Smith.
You know, I think that in terms of the actual incident, it was about the noose incident, was that the question? You know, I think that incident and some other incidents that we have had at city government recently, I think really calls for a very close examination of our personnel policies and how we address these situations. I was there, working there when that happened. What I recall, and again, I wasn't part of any of the discussions about what to do or what not to do, but I mean, the sense that I remember hearing was from the legal department that they were following, you know, the policies and following the law. I think that was a very disturbing, it was a disturbing incident for me personally. It was a disturbing incident for many people in the community, and I think there was, at best, you know, at least the perception that it was not handled properly. And I think with this latest, you know, porn thing and some of the other stuff, I think it really calls for us to be updating our policies and making sure that we have policies in place for these kinds of situations, because I also got the sense that we were just kind of running on the fly with some of this.
Mr. Coffey.
I think it's more, you know, when you look at that incident with the noose and then you look at the porn incident, I think what the mayor has to do is make sure that the people that are managing are making sure that they don't tolerate this kind of nonsense. You know, so much of it can be stopped by having a manager in place that says, hey, we're not going to be playing games, we're not going to be messing around and all that. So I think the key for the mayor is to make sure that the management people understand that we've got a 0 tolerance for this, and you need to hold the management responsible for the behavior that's going on and make sure that they don't tolerate, you know, childish games is basically what needs to happen.
Thank you. And I have a question for Mr. Bradley. Do I have enough time for a 3rd question, or should I turn it over to
Go
Mr.
right ahead.
Dietrich? All right, I will continue with my 3rd question then. And this question will begin with Mr. Kunz. The city currently sends recruiters to places like St. Louis and Chicago to recruit minorities for city jobs, but it doesn't seem to be working, as evidenced by the fact that about 92% of the city's workforce is white. How can we convince minorities to work for the city?
Well, in my administration, I mean, as far as it comes to firemen and police, I think our biggest drawback there is a lot of young minority men and women do not know police and firemen to get an idea what the job is. And I think that's where you have a problem in that recruiting. As far as the rest of the city, in my administration, I'll take care of that. There won't be any patronage. Everybody will have an equal chance to get the jobs. And then what I've seen in the 12 years I've been an alderman, that has not been the case. Most jobs have been filled way before they were ever posted. And that just won't happen with me. And I think any qualified minority will have as good a chance as anybody else to work for the city of Springfield.
Thank you. Ms. Kunz, I'm sorry, Ms. Shelia Stock-Smith. Yeah, sorry.
She won't like that.
My apologies.
I may not like that, yeah, I don't know. So, tell me the question again, I'm sorry, getting off track.
How would you make sure that the city hires enough minorities? How can we convince minorities to work for the city?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's short-term and long-term, but we've obviously not done a good job with this. And again, this is a byproduct, in my opinion, of a very long time, good old boys kind of network that we live in here in Springfield. And it's not only with racial, you know, with minorities, racial minorities, but I mean, look at the numbers of women. We got 52% of women in the population, and what was it, 20% or something like that. I have looked at my own numbers of just the top city jobs, looking at the income from 90,000 and up, and there's about 200 of those jobs, or 220 of those jobs, which surprised me to begin with. But of those, only 3% are women. And actually, that's being generous, because there were a couple of names that you couldn't be sure of. I think it's actually 1%. So, you know, this begs to ask, there's more going on than just, you know, policies and procedures. This is about a culture that we live in that we need to change.
Thank you. Mr. Coffey.
It's a great question, and it's the first question I asked Chief Bobby Williams, because, you know, I don't know the answer. And what he told me is we've got to have a constant recruiting effort. You know, so many times we wait till the very end and say, oh, we need to hire more minorities, and we go and we look immediately. He said it's got to be a constant effort. One of the things I think the mayor needs to do is make sure that our minority police officers, our minority firefighters are in the schools, going through, have training days, so that the kids get used to seeing minority police officers, minority firemen, minorities in general that work for the city of Springfield. And you have to have a constant recruiting effort.
Thank you. Mr. Houston.
My experience has been during the course of this campaign is that as I have talked to minorities in Springfield, there doesn't seem to be a lack of people who would like to work for city government. So it must be the system that we have in place that prevents minorities from getting jobs within city government, because there seems to be a large number of people that would like to be able to work for the city of Springfield. And if we look at the city of Springfield, number one, the wages are fairly good. The benefits are excellent. And I think that we don't really need to be going outside the city of Springfield to recruit people, to bring them into the city of Springfield. I think we have plenty of people in Springfield that have the capability of doing the jobs. When we talk in terms of police and fire, what we need to do is to change our system so that what I've talked about is changing a system similar to what the Sangamon County Sheriff does, and in hiring police officers and firefighters, that 25% of all hires would be minorities.
Thank you. I will turn it over now to Mr. Dietrich of the State Journal-Register.
Okay. This is an officially nonpartisan election, but for the last week, party politics has dominated the conversation. Which party do you identify with, and will your door be open to leaders of that party, or will your administration be influenced in any way by that party? Mr. Kunz?
No, I'm a Democrat, but I didn't go ask nobody for no support, so everybody be treated the same with me.
Okay, Ms. Stocksmith?
I am a Democrat, and I have said that from the beginning of this campaign. I've not switched, I've not changed, I'm not shying away from that label. I'm proud to be a Democrat, and I've been a Democrat since all my adult life. But here in Springfield, I have not, I've not been that involved in local party politics, at least up until maybe when I ran for school board. And then afterwards, I became a little bit more involved with the Sangamon County Democratic Party. But I have not been endorsed by the Sangamon County Democratic Party. I do have the support of Senator Durbin, and I'm very proud to have that support. And I will definitely use my relationship with Senator Durbin to help improve the city of Springfield. I think that there are you can't find a project all over this town, a major project that Senator Durbin hasn't helped us with. So, I mean, in that sense, but I would certainly work across lines. I've done that my whole career here in Springfield and worked with Republicans very well.
Mr. Coffey?
Well, I'm a Republican, and I'm assuming this question is geared at me. I had a disagreement with, Tony Libre. He wanted me to get out of the race. I said no. Doesn't mean that I don't believe in Republican ideals of no to taxes, smaller government. I will work with anybody. One of the things I think we need to get away from is this Republican-Democrat label when it comes to city politics. I've never seen a Republican pothole. I've never seen a Democratic pothole. I've never seen a Republican sewer, Democratic sewer. Party politics really plays less of a role, I believe, in the city, because we all have to work together, because it's all to our benefit. So we need to eliminate this partisanship when it comes to making this city work, because only if we work together will we solve these problems. And I'll work with anybody that has the best interest of the city of Springfield.
Mr. Houston?
I am a Republican. I would point out that prior to the time that I was elected mayor, I had never voted in a party primary, and many people in Springfield are that way. While I am a Republican, I'm also the one person that's sitting on this stage that has a record having served 2 terms as the mayor of the city of Springfield. And we approach city government on a nonpartisan type of basis, where we worked with the people of the community, we worked with members of both parties, and I would anticipate that as mayor of the city of Springfield, that I would continue to take that same type of an approach. We are a nonpartisan type of operation. The mayor of the city of Springfield is to represent the best interest of the people of the city of Springfield, not to represent the best interest of either political party. And as mayor, I will commit to bringing good government to the city.
Okay. Mayor Davlin pursued reducing pension benefits for future police and firefighters. And last year, the state legislature heeded his call and reduced those pensions. Now there's talk in the legislature of making benefit changes for existing public employees. Do you agree with the changes made for future police and firefighters? And do you think further changes need to be made, especially concerning reductions in pension benefits of current public employees? Ms. Stock-Smith?
I do not agree with the reduction of pension benefits for current employees. I think that in terms of the legislation that was passed previously that affects new employees, you know, I know, I mean, we have to do something, and the state is in a condition and that we have to do it, and it's obviously filters down to the local governments. So, you know, in general, I don't buy into this philosophy that it is our workers that are at fault in the condition of our state. And for many, many, many years, the state has not paid in, the city didn't either pay in to the extent that it should be paying in. So, then to turn around and kind of place all the blame on the workers in our city, the people who actually, you know, fight our fires and and protect us and that kind of stuff. I just don't buy into that rhetoric. I think it's divisive, and I don't think it ends up us being able to move forward and solve problems collectively.
Mr. Coffey.
We're in difficult economic times, and we're going to have to start to make cuts. I am not for making cuts for pension cuts for existing employees. I don't think it's fair that people plan their entire lives and believing that they have certain benefits and then midstream that should be changed. However, I do believe that we will have to start looking at a different pension system for new employees and new hires going down the road in order to make our governments work. We're going to have to start doing more with less, but I don't think we should do it to people that have planned their lives on something that was promised them.
Mr. Houston?
Under the Illinois Constitution, you really can't change pension benefits once they've been established for public employees, so that as we take a look at existing employees, I think we are locked in by law to continue the benefits that they currently receive. With regards to the changes, yes, I think those changes needed to be made. But I think it's really important that as we look at the city of Springfield to realize we have three pension systems. We have the Illinois Municipal Retirement System, which is a fully funded system. And the reason it's fully funded is the IMRF requires the city of Springfield to put in a certain amount of money each year. There is no choice. They simply tell us, and it goes in. Police and fire pension funds are controlled locally. And the problem that we have with the police and fire pension funds is the city of Springfield for a number of years anticipated an 8% return, which is an unrealistic return. Keep in mind that the police officers and firefighters of the city of Springfield have put in their money over the years. It is the city that has shorted the contribution and has caused the problem.
And Mr. Kunz.
I agree. You can't cut the pensions of people who are already working for the city of Springfield. I think the people of Springfield have to understand that the liability on the police and firemen is so great that each year it's going to start eating up more and more of our budget. Therefore, we're going to have less money to do other things with. I do think future employees, there may have to be a two-tiered wage scale. I think the only way you're going to get this in hand is, unfortunately, is either the employees are going to have to pay more for their pensions, or they're going to have to be reduced wages, or the taxpayers are going to have to pay more, because in order for IMRF to be totally funded, every year they do an audit, and if they don't make as much money as they think they need to make, the citizens have to make up the difference. I think maybe somewhere along the line, maybe if, like in a 401k, if it goes down, maybe the employees would have to pay more.
Okay. The downtown tax increment finance district expires in 2016. Should that signal the end of a special program for downtown redevelopment? Or should something like a special service area or business enterprise zone replace it? And why or why not? Mr. Coffey.
I believe, you know, the downtown TIF has been very successful. It has served its purpose. In 2016, you know, that would be something to look at, you know, evaluate it. You know, do we expand the TIF to a different area? But yes, I think we need to continue to redevelop the downtown. I would like to see us, you know, redevelop. One of our biggest sites is, you know, Lincoln's home, Lincoln's tomb, and all that. I would like to see that entire corridor redeveloped, coming down from Lincoln's home to Lincoln's tomb. You know, we need to redevelop the entire downtown. My idea is that when people come to the city of Springfield, they see a beautiful small city with white picket fence. They say, what a nice, quaint town. And I think that all of these things will be useful tools in making sure that that happens.
Mr. Houston.
We need to have some type of an incentive plan to encourage people to invest in the downtown area. The downtown is both the property tax base of this community and the employment base of the community. And it's very, very important that we maintain that property and employment base within the city of Springfield. At the time that the TIF expires, we may be able to establish a new TIF. It would be starting with the equalized assessed valuation at whatever level it is in the year 2016. A business service district is something that could be considered, but that also is going to require the support of the property owners within the city of Springfield. And that would probably, in all honesty, be a very difficult thing to have approved. I think we need to be looking for economic development tools that will, in fact, allow us to continue to offer incentives. I think incentives are necessary to maintain the downtown, and that is something that we will have to look at and see what's available at that particular time.
Mr. Kunz?
Well, I know one thing, that it's never been done before after a TIF district's been around for 35 years, to re-up it or have any of the land inside of it put into a new one. I think we've spent a lot of money on downtown Springfield, a lot of tax money that used to be put into a pool to help the entire city. I think downtown Springfield is going to have to now depend on private people to put forth some money to build it better than it is now. I mean, it's way better than what it was when the TIF district started, but I think government has done all it can for downtown Springfield. I think a lot of the money has been wasted on some fluff things instead of actually trying to get like a grocery store, because out on the east end, they actually, with the TIF money, subsidized a grocery store. Everybody wanted this downtown, but it's never been tried. So maybe we could do some sort of tax breaks to get a grocery store that would help start bringing more people downtown.
Ms. Stock-Smith.
You know, I think that we need to begin to look at the whole idea of economic development and as I have said, and it linked more closely with what I'm saying is community development. Community development is not a new concept within economic development by any means. But what I'm talking about is looking at more of not just the TIFs and the tax incentive kinds of things, which I would agree we do need, but a broader vision about how we look at these areas and in terms of quality of life and in terms of the amenities that are necessary for downtown and for older neighborhoods, in terms of making sure that the services are accessible, in terms of making sure that there's transportation accessible and housing, looking at different kind of mix of urban residents and quality schools and public safety. I mean, all those kinds of things I think we need to look at it more as a holistic vision at this point.
Okay. Do you think the city needs a second water supply? And if you do, how would you persuade the city that water rates need to almost double in order to build it? If you don't, how would you deal with a severe 100-year drought? And we'll start with Mr. Houston.
I've been in favor of building a second lake since day one. I think that we need an alternative water supply. What we also need is a mayor and an administration that is actually going to push the Army Corps of Engineers and the EPA to come up with a timetable and what is required for us to be able to get the permits. And as mayor, I would immediately begin pushing both the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers to get a timetable and to get specifically what we need done. We have spent approximately somewhere between $27 and $30 million thus far to take Hunter Lake to the point it is today. If they are going to require us to go back and start redoing studies that were originally done in 1988 and 1989, that can be a very costly project. And if there is no real outlook out there that this can get done, then we probably need to go ahead and look for another alternative water supply and begin selling the land that has been accumulated.
Mr. Kunz?
Well, having sat on city council, I think it was in 2000 when the lake almost dried up. If we got lucky because southeast of Springfield it rained a whole lot and we pumped 5 foot of water in from the Sangamon River to the lake. I think we need to wait. I don't think we should get rid of land. I think we should wait till Chatham gets off our water system and see what our actual usage is. But I do think what city council needs to do is pass some rules now when there isn't a drought to let people know this is what's going to happen if that lake does dry up. Because that year it got really bizarre when we were starting to talk about water restriction and everybody griping how we were picking on one industry or another. So I think you need a set of rules when there isn't a drought, when the drought will come, because it will come someday.
And Ms. Stock-Smith.
You know, we just don't have the money for this project. I think if we had the money, I would be supportive of it, but we don't. We don't have the money for Lake 2. I have said from the beginning of this campaign that this has been on the book, this has been in the works for a very long time. We've had study after study after study. We don't have the money, but I've been reluctant to take it completely off the table, and I think one option is to leave it in its natural state and continue just it sort of as it is, and then in the case that we would actually need it, it would be there for us. But I do think that there are a number of other alternatives that have been reviewed over the years, and I think, again, it's one of these projects that I would love to see happen, but we don't have the money for it, and there's an awful lot of other needs in our community, so it wouldn't be my top priority.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Coffey?
Well, would I like to see Lake 2? Yes, but until I know how much more it was going to cost, can we get the permitting? Do we have to go back and redo the studies? I can't make that decision. And the big problem is we don't have the money right now. And I am not for raising taxes. I am not for raising fees. Our taxes have just been raised through the state. I think we're overtaxed as a community here in Illinois, and I'm not willing to tax the people to push this project forward. So maybe we do need to sell the property and look for other sources of water. But until I'm in that office and I can get all of the facts together, I can't give you an exact determination. But I will tell you that I'm not for any fee increases and not for any taxes to get it done.
Okay. Sure.
Just a very brief question in terms of a wrap-up. What would you do, your first task, your first day in office, other than, the obvious things, setting up your office and whatnot, the first major task you would have? And I believe we're starting with Mr. Houston.
I think that, again, we have a number of things that we will do. Number one, I anticipate that we will be appointing a team to manage city water, light, and power, that we will begin the budget process, because we've indicated that within the first 30 days that we will redo the budget that is currently in place, because as you set a budget, you set your priorities for the next 12 months, and the new mayor and city council should be setting the priorities for the city of Springfield for the next year, not the current mayor and city council. That we would begin to review all personal services contracts within the city government, that we would then also begin to review all contracts within city government, and move forward in putting a team together to manage city government.
Briefly, Mr. Kunz, the first thing you would do if elected?
Well, the first thing I do is whatever, as soon as I get in the mayor's office, whatever we can cut out of the mayor's office, we're going to cut out to show the rest of the rank and file at the city that we mean business. Second thing I would do, the management of the police and fire would no longer get a spike twice a year, to show the rank and file there that we mean business. I think the first things you have to do is start at the top, say here's what we're going to do. So when it gets down, which I believe this administration, next administration is going to have to cut people, that you can show it's going to be across the board, and whatever has to be done will be done.
Ms. Stocksmith?
I'll just repeat what I've said. I will direct my department directors to begin an agency review. I mean, that will be the first task. Also, it will be putting the team together, and then, I think what I haven't mentioned, I think too, is just going out and introducing myself to the employees, and expressing the vision and the philosophy, and urging them to be part of the team.
And finally, Mr. Coffey.
The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and meet with the directors and meet with the personnel. I think the first thing the mayor has to do is change the morale of city government. I want everybody at City Hall to know that we're all in this together, and we can make Springfield a better place to work and live and raise a family. But I need their help, and I want them to know that I need their help. I want them to participate. I want their ideas. I want them to tell me ways that we can make government more efficient. And if we all work together, we can get it done.
Thank you all. That concludes our forum for the candidates in the April 5th mayoral election. On behalf of the Springfield Citizens Club, let me extend thanks to each of the candidates participating today: Mike Coffey, Mike Houston, Frank Kunz, Shelia Stocksmith. And thanks also to our panel members: Jenna Dooley with WUIS, Patrick Yeagle, Illinois Times, and Matt Dietrich of the State Journal-Register. And of course, thanks to all of you in the audience here this morning. And don't forget to vote on April 5th.
The Citizens Club of Springfield Mayoral Forum is brought to you by Abraham Lincoln Capital Airport, Central Illinois Building and Construction Trades Council, Kerber, Eck Braeckel Asset Management, Maldaner's Restaurant, Michael Higgins, owner, chef, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and through the support of viewers like you. Thank you.